Hey guys, welcome. Manuj Aggarwal here with a very special guest, Nic Peterson. Nick and I met him last year in September, and the amount of knowledge and clarity that Nick possesses, it just blows away my mind and anybody who talks to Nick. Nick is a very successful entrepreneur himself. He runs seven or eight companies of himself, and then he has a huge network of other successful entrepreneurs. He helps them build and grow their companies beyond $10 million mark. So we are going to hear from him how is he planning to tackle the crisis that we are facing collectively globally, and what is his advice on getting through. Whether you are a professional working in a company or entrepreneur running a business, what is his advice to make sure that we are secure and our families are taken care of. So welcome, Nick.
Yeah, man. Thank you for the introduction. That was great.
Thank you. All right. You see things very differently from a lot of other people. So let's start there. What do you see how this thing is going to unfold? We are going through this pandemic, this crisis. What are some of the things that you are noticing that other people may not be noticing? Let's start there, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah, I think so just to start, there's the reality is we don't know, right? Which is tough because a lot of people want to know. I've seen it on Facebook. I've seen like, just tell me when it's going to end. And it's one of those things. It's not the weather, right? If we predict the weather, for example, whether we're right or wrong, it's going to be what it's going to be, right? So we can put a raincoat on. I can say, hey, it's going to rain. We put a raincoat on, and then it's sunny the next day. We have no control over that. What's happening now, like both the health issues, the economic issues, it's a little bit different because the predictions actually change the behavior, which changes the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm a little hesitant to talk about, to speculate, because unlike the weather, if you change your behavior, it changes the outcome.
Yeah.
Right.
That's very deep, obviously. So let's get into that. One of the things one of the books that you have written, Bumpers. Maybe we can talk about that right now. Or what should be our behavior right now? As you said, like it's very unpredictable. So what are some of the actions we can take, and can we draw some inspiration from the Bumpers concept that you have come up with, which is an excellent book, which I highly recommend everybody should read.
Yeah, and I think I have some exercises and Bumpers that are useful. I think right now there's been a panic, and then honestly, on my end anyway, I'm kind of disconnected from like mass market. I talk to a lot of movers, shakers, and people that operate a little bit differently. But there's an initial panic, and so my calendar filled up of people freaking out, right? And then about a week later, my calendar filled up with people that have said, wait a minute, it's not that bad, right? The speculation was worse than what's actually happening so far. And wow, there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of things I didn't see before, because I was chasing when times are good, we chase, right? All this upside, all this opportunity, all these possibilities. And what happens is we don't handle the small stuff. So I think it's a good opportunity right now to journal a lot. I write every morning. I don't necessarily journal traditionally. And start reflecting on what actually matters. And the reason I suggest that you write this down is because we're going to come out. There's going to be another side of this, whether it's 6 months from now, a year from now, 3 weeks from now, there's going to be another side of this. And it's unfortunate that I can't say, here's what you can do right now, because everything that could be done to create like certainty right now should have been done a year and a half ago, So I think it's a good time to journal and reflect on what matters. And then as we come to the other side of this, continue to refer back to that, so that I'm going to tell you, something's going to happen again, right? 2008, we had the housing crisis. The whole financial system almost went down, right? And now we're 2020. We have this. There'll be 2031. It'll be something else, right? And so I think it's a great time right now to reflect on what really matters, and spend a lot of time building systems, which is what Bumpers is, right? My book it's really about building the systems so that you remember what's important. You don't go off on a million different directions chasing all this opportunity. You really remember what's important.
Yeah.
So that when we come out on the other side of this, all this opportunity is going to open up again, right? We've talked to Bank of New York. We talked to Bernstein. I think you probably saw those replays.
Yeah.
They're projecting growth in 2021 and beyond.
Okay.
So the trap right now is panicking, getting to the other side, because we're all going to get to the other side, and then forgetting everything that led us to being uncertain and panicking right now, right?
Yeah.
Economy starts growing again, people start getting jobs again, and we forget what we just went through, and we develop all the habits, and we procrastinate on all the things that we procrastinated on before that led us to here.
Yeah.
So I think if you're going to study something, right, history is always good. I would look at Stoicism.
Yeah.
I would take a nice, during this time, look at Stoicism and really learn the importance of one, just being okay. Right. That's one of the things about this whole thing is like, whatever happens, I'm okay. I know I'm going to be okay. I start developing that muscle, the stoic muscle, so to speak. Economically, if you're a business owner or not, my default is to be helpful. That's the other thing I would recommend right now is few people might cash in. There's some industries that are probably crushing it right now. If you got cash, you throw it in the market right now, you might end up doing pretty well. But by and large, nobody's getting rich. The mass market, majority of people right now, they are not doing something that's going to make them a ton of money right now.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's an opportunity to put out a lot of goodwill, build a very strong brand, build a lot of relationships, right? And so for me right now, it's about mitigating the downside and exploring all of the potential and building all the relationships and putting all the goodwill out. And I mean, people are lost, they're confused. So if you can be an oasis of stability during this time, when we do get to the other end, because we are going to, now you have a massive unfair advantage and an opportunity to actually make a ton of money with a strong brand, a lot of goodwill, a lot of trust, and a much bigger audience. So that's what I would be doing right now. Whether I had a job, didn't have a job, entrepreneur, I would be looking for opportunities to be genuinely helpful. And I, again, go back to journaling, write down, because what you're going to see a correlation. 6 months ago, I just helped people for the sake of helping people. And now I'm getting referrals. People are buying my stuff. Like, you're going to see that correlation. So it's just another argument for just writing stuff down right now. Be helpful and write stuff down.
Yeah, that's one fundamental change in the way that you think, and your entire network thinks is being helpful. And I'm amazed at the amount of goodwill that you put out. Like, you put out numerous daily emails, numerous daily videos, and they're like super valuable. Everything is available for free. So please go check out all this stuff that Nic and his network puts out. So it's thoroughly helpful. Now, one thing you mentioned was, journal and think about what is important. And when we mention this, and I've been a victim of this, immediately our thought process goes towards, okay, what is important is making money so that I can take care of my family, so that I can, be happy at a subsequent time in the future. So can you help us get to that concept? Like, when you say what is important, this is where, it actually just opened up my mind when I read the Bumpers book. When you say what is important, can you dive a little bit deeper so that people can understand what really important things are in life?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's from a need. I've come on this kick lately about long game versus short game. A lot of it is the need to have everything right now, and have some sort of title or some sort of there's something that represents victory, right? And that's what we've been taught. you go to college to get a degree, you play sports to get a trophy, you play sports for a long time to go to the Hall of Fame. These are all titles.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of in our culture, and that's perfectly fine. It does encourage us to strive for things. The problem is we have these titles, and I don't know, when we're 10 years old, then we're 12, and then we're 18, we develop all of these assumptions and we never re-examine them. So like you said, I got to make money so I can take care of my family and yada, yada, yada. The mistake is not digging deep enough, right? So we say, what's important? Well, I got to make money. Well, that's not what's important. What's important is that your family is taken care of, right? Now you've been drilled in, for whatever reason, you've developed this idea that this is the way we take care of my family, right? I got to make sure that each kid, we can have a house, so each kid has their own bedroom, and then go to these schools, and they can have this kind of food, and we can go to the movies and all this stuff. That's all an assumption. Those are just a series of assumptions we made. So bumpers, and what I implore people to do is, like, what really matters. What really matters is, and I'll go back a little bit because this is a point in bumpers too.
Yeah.
It is not uncommon for somebody to say, okay, the most important thing to me is my family. And based on my beliefs, the best way to serve my family is to make a bunch of money, right? And they go down this spiral where they become so obsessed with making money, they lose their family. They get divorced. They never see their kids, right? It's an example of that massive leap of logic and never re-examining it. So it's really what is important. It's that, in this case, let's say that I can feed my family and we're together. You do not have to make very much money to feed your family and stay together.
Yeah.
If you want to keep your 5-bedroom house, maybe, right? But then you have to have a conversation with yourself. What's really important? Maybe the 5-bedroom house and the Ferrari is more important than your family. And that, no judgment here, but if you say one thing and you optimize for another, you're going to be fighting a war of attrition. There's a lot of dissonance there, right?
Yeah.
So that's really, it's bridging that gap. Like, sit down and say, is it the fact that I have this massive house and all of my kids have Mercedes that's important? Or is it just knowing that they're alive and healthy and we're together? Because those are very, very different things. It doesn't take much, right? I mean, I understand that there's bills and all this stuff, but at the very, very core of it, it doesn't take much to keep your family healthy and alive and together.
Yeah, that's true.
So the need to make $100,000 this month is not actually necessary. So it's important to explore, like, why am I doing what I'm doing, and what do I really want? Because I probably don't need to do all the things that I'm panicking about doing in order to get what I really want.
Yeah.
It's just again, it's a time to reflect on that stuff.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, it has brought about a huge pattern change in my thinking, for sure. Ever since I've studied your work, and I find it a lot more. I find a lot more peace and certainty in my life just thinking slightly differently. But it was not easy. It took a lot of struggle, just struggling with myself. Answering those questions. So do you find, like, people struggle, or people, even if they sit down and reflect on it, do they struggle to answer these questions very honestly with themselves, or they still, they still are bogged down by all the stories, as you said, like, all the stories that we hear from society, from our peers? How do you actually enable yourself to answer these questions very honestly?
Well, first of all, there is the elimination. There's 3 things. And 2 of them stem from one, right? Which is fear. Fear creates a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. And so I think it's important to understand that humans were circumnavigating creatures, which means we aim at something. And then we completely, excuse my language, we completely fuck it up. And that's okay. Like, we have to eliminate the guilt and the shame. We have a lot of people who get stuck because, well, am I doing this right? Is this good? Is this evil? Is this bad? And those are all those are all arbitrary, right? It really depends on who you're talking to and what they believe. And so we're aiming creatures. We aim at a thing, right? And then we don't go straight there. We circumnavigate, right? So an example might be we're too passive, right? And so we get knocked off course, and then we say, you know what? I'm not going to be passive anymore. I'm gonna correct that. And we usually overshoot the other way. We become way too rigid, right? But we're a little bit closer to our goal. And we just have to have the ability to recognize that, say, that's okay. I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I'm not going to cry over spilled milk. I'm not going to punish myself. I'm just going to correct course. And then we're going to become a little too passive again, but not as passive as we were before, right? So it's actually a process of circumnavigation. And you have to understand that, because anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. So you're going to be bad at stuff. You're going to mess up. You're going to upset people. And that's what people are afraid of. So they fall into guilt and shame and punishment, which is a cycle that is really, really rough. A lot of people live there like forever. So part of the frame shift is understanding that we're going to circumnavigate. We are going to overshoot one way, and we're probably going to overshoot the other way. And we're probably going to overshoot the other way again. And that's going to continue until we get we're still going to continue to overshoot, but it'll be, super small, make little mini mistakes. And until we accept that, we can't shift our thinking very much, because we're going to be controlled by fear of what others think. Did I do it right? Did I do it wrong? Am I going to get fired because I messed up? All that stuff. So that's one. Understand that we're going to circumnavigate things. There's a lot of really good books about it. Jordan Peterson writes about it a lot. It's all in all of his stuff. Spiral dynamics is another version. It's just a spiral. Instead of circumnavigating, it's just a spiral upward. So you have to understand that, like, if it's worth doing poorly, and it's okay. It's okay to mess up. And then you can really start saying, hey, I'll give you another example. The number of people that say, hey, you should really do this. And I say, why? I say, because you would make more money. Right? And they mean well, but they don't know what I'm optimizing for. They don't know that I want more money. They assume that because they want more money that I must as well. So it's another piece of understanding that a lot of this pressure you're feeling, you shouldn't feel. It's just other people don't understand what matters to you. And if you don't understand what matters to you, you're very likely to just go along with whatever they tell you to do. So setting these bumpers, it's really about, I'm not a huge fan. I like the concept, but I'm not a huge fan of F everybody else. I do my own thing. Having haters is a sign of good. Like, generally speaking, having haters means you just don't communicate well. But I am a big fan of not letting what other people think dictate what I do. But again, you have to get over the fear of being rejected and the guilt and the shame, and depending on what religion, what belief, what your societal norms, it's really hard to say, hey, these things don't matter to me. This thing does. Because if you're in a culture, a lot of Asian cultures, right, and you tell your parents you're 10 years old or 15 and you say, I don't want to be a doctor, that doesn't go over well.
No, for sure.
Right? And so it's, as a 15-year-old kid, you may not be developed enough to understand. But the problem is, as a 25-year-old that came from that Asian culture, you never stopped and revisited what really matters to you. So it's a process of, okay, look, there's circumnavigation. I have to get over this guilt and shame. Now, what do I really want? Right? And it's tough. It's the especially if you weren't born in the US. A lot of people come with really, really strong beliefs. Or if any religious denomination that is super strict, there's a lot of rewiring, but it starts with it's okay to want what I want, and the more that I pretend, again, maybe I just want a really fast car that looks really cool and people think I'm awesome.
Mhm.
It is best for me to just admit that and know that it's okay. No guilt, no shame, no judgment. It's okay that I just want to have nice stuff. Your life becomes a lot easier when you stop lying to yourself.
That's true.
So it's just a process of working through that guilt and that shame and alleviating that fear, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Then you can start doing what actually matters to you, which is pretty cool.
That's great. That's great. So yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people who are experienced and they have seen life a little bit closely, but there are sort of a lot of beginners as well. So I'll recommend. I mean, these are very deep conversations, and I hope you are able to take the essence of it. But definitely starts with the Bumpers book. Do you have a URL that you want to share, Nic?
Yeah, you can get the PDF at bumpersbook.com. If you want to just go from Amazon, I don't really know what their deal with shipping is right now. I think they're still shipping. NicPetersonBook.com will actually just redirect right to Amazon.
Okay.
It's like 50 pages.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not.
it's
It's not a
short.
lot.
It's short, but it's very powerful. And now I want to also help the beginners. Like, how did you accumulate all this knowledge and experience? I mean, I know you read a lot, you write a lot. So can you just share your sort of daily routine so that people can get some inspiration from that and incorporate that, especially in this time?
Yeah, it's a great time. It's a great time to read, and so it's interesting. The process is interesting because I do know people that read more than I do, and seem to me anyway. Again, it's all perspective. They seem to completely miss the point of what they're doing.
Mhm.
So for me, it's all about perspective. It's all about understanding. It's all about sleeping well at night and just like being happy.
Mhm.
And they say ignorance is bliss, but the truth is ignorant people are just mad at everybody else all the time.
Mhm.
So what I do is I read whatever is interesting to me. I think reading on a very particular topic is not as useful because generally you're looking for some end, right? Like how to plant tomatoes. Cool. So I'll read whatever is interesting to me. It could be, it might have physics, it might be spirituality related, it might be business, might be a biography, whatever it is. And I highlight as I read because these are things that I say, wow, I really want to explore this deeper. So I highlight as I read. And then what I do is I come back and I have my little book stand. I get made fun of for my book stand all the time.
Mhm.
What I do is I read the highlights and I try to take the concept and put it in context of my life, right? So I'm sure you see all the time, people quote things.
Yeah.
And then like you recognize that they're not even applying the thing that they're talking about.
Mhm.
That's terrifying to me. So say, okay, so here's a concept of, I don't know, relative change versus absolute change. Okay, what does that mean in my life? Now I'm into fitness. Obviously, that's where I started. So in terms of fitness, like how's relative change different than absolute change? Oh, that makes sense to me. Okay. Now in business, right? So again, relative change, adding $10,000 a month. That's an absolute number.
Mhm.
Amazon doesn't care about that, but it might change your life, right? So that's relative change in the context of business. And then I just go through, what else am I interested in? What does this mean to me? And then I think, what does this mean to the people that I care about? And I just apply it in as many domains as possible. And I write about it. And I go on to the next highlight and I do it again. And then what I do, which I'm fortunate, not everybody has an audience, but I have an audience, so I could turn around and I can just start talking about it. And I get feedback immediately that people are like, dude, what are you talking about?
Mhm.
Which means I can't clearly articulate it yet. So I just keep working through it.
Mhm.
And I just do that. I go through, generally one book will reference like 3 or 4 more. So I'll order those and I'll go through that and I just go down a rabbit hole. But it's important to me that I understand, okay, this is the concept that makes sense in this particular domain. It's also the thing that worries me about academics, right? Is they can be introduced to a concept in one domain and completely miss it everywhere else. Again, that's the exact opposite of why I read or listen or whatever. So I take my highlights and I just reword them. I say, what does this mean for me? And I have a bunch of private clients. So I might say, okay, what does this mean for, what does this mean for Dan? He's got an accounting firm. Okay. So I guess yada, yada, yada. I might talk to him about it. Really trying to understand, okay, here's this cool thing. It sounds great. How do I apply it? And more importantly, how do I not completely miss it when it comes up in real life? Because what's the point of reading about it if I'm going to miss it anyway? Yeah. And so that's the process. I have a bunch of handwritten notes. You don't necessarily have to write. It slows me down. I like to slow down and write. But read anything you're interested in. I don't think there's any self-help, business, fiction, nonfiction. I don't think it really matters. I think there's concepts and there's principles that are universal. There's a very natural law. And when you recognize things, highlight them and come back to them and then put them in your own words.
Cool.
Explain what it means to you. You got kids? What does it mean to your kids? How can you talk to them about it? That kind of stuff.
Awesome. That's great. And, I talked to a few people about these concepts, about meditation and things like that. And they say, I'm busy making money. I'm busy making deals and stuff like that. But I just want to highlight, the kind of success it actually, putting in this effort of reading, accumulating knowledge and applying it to real life. Like some of the things that you've been able to do, like you were invited to Johns Hopkins Hospital, where the best doctors are employed, but they couldn't diagnose some ailment. Could you share that story?
Yeah, that was so one of the things, to be clear, it's similar with a lot of the places that I've been and people I've talked to. I'm fortunate to be surrounded by really intelligent people. And one of the things that is important to me is taking these concepts and principles and articulating them in another way. And so one of my good friends, my old business partner, Trevor Cashy, he's a PhD in metabolic chemistry. Brilliant guy. Really just a process of talking to people and looking at things differently. And then having resources like if we're to talk about biology, chemistry, anything medical, Trevor, Dr. Cashy is absolutely the information resource, right? And so in this case, we see he's able to recognize something that maybe other people miss or are not comfortable suggesting for whatever reason. I'm able to articulate. I'm able to talk to Trevor and say, okay, I understand what this means for this person, and then turn around and articulate it to the person in a way that changes their behavior. So a lot of the things like that, like, medical mystery resolved, is more about taking what a technician may have already known, like a really, really smart doctor already knew, but was not articulating in a way that the patient would change their behavior appropriately. Okay. And so in that case, and in many cases, I just have really, really smart people in my corner. And by going through this process of saying, okay, what does that mean? Okay, well, what does that mean for this person? And then going to, in this case, the patient and saying, okay, give me context about your life. Okay. Now I know how to articulate this information in a way that'll get this person to change their behavior to get the outcome that everybody was trying to get to. There's been a lot of that. And it is through the process of just continually reinventing language. Yeah. Because there's a huge base knowledge disconnect. And so I can tell you that sometimes I amalgamate things in a unique way. Nothing I have ever done or suggested anybody do is new. I broke down and taught diffusion of innovations, right, for the R3 class. Mm-hmm. That research was done in 1957, the initial research. So it's nothing new. It's just the ability to figure out what it actually means for normal people. Mm-hmm. and then articulate it. And you can develop that skill yourself in like the reading process I just described. But it could be listening, it could be watching YouTube videos, it could be having conversations, taking notes, and then coming through it. So
that's great. And I want to take it one step further, because it's not only you're helping people in other fields, like experts in other fields, doctors and all that. I mean, you've had a huge financial success of yourself, and you've been able to contribute to other people's success. Your first company, the gym that you built, turned into like a seven figure business in under a year. Like, can you share that story, and how did you make it a unique business within your community?
Yeah, and I'll clarify that too, because there's I don't talk about. I actually sent an email about it. I don't talk much. I'm happy to, but I don't talk much about past accomplishments and stuff, because that's the past, right? People should be in my world for what I can do for them now, not for what I've done before. So
I mean, maybe we can take a current example.
No, I'll share this because I think it's really important. My gym in Vero Beach went from one little bay with no equipment, and I slept in it. I mean, it's Florida, it's hot, it's uncomfortable. I actually slept in the bathroom in the winter because it was insulated. Okay, so I'm sleeping on the cement floor in this little tiny warehouse. Within about a year and a half, we had knocked down 1, 2, 3 walls and taken over another bay and turned it into an office. Pretty much at capacity, very high price, 100% referrals. Never learned the paid traffic skill. At that point, I didn't even consider paid traffic. But to be fair and just to be transparent, which is missing on the internet, I think, for about 3.5 or 4 years before that, I had a gym a couple miles down the road that, I mean, I slept in that gym for 3 years. It took a long time to get traction. But it was through, it's the same thing I do now, retention referrals, raving fans, serving people. We just built a massive community of people that love what we do. The biggest shift for me was realizing an opportunity. So I was a gym, and it was all about like lifting heavy weights and, hardcore strongman and powerlifting. And I was broke for 4 years, and realizing an opportunity that I was in a very, very affluent community. And because of the way that I looked, people that otherwise would never talk to me would talk to me, share stuff with me, and they would pay me for it. So I said, wait a minute, I'm going to get a free education. I'm learning so much stuff. So I didn't really kick them out. I just kind of like, hey, strongman, power lifters, like, you guys, you go over in the corner over there. And I just said, hey, I only want affluent, successful, educated people. And I trained most of them for dirt cheap because it was still a great deal for me, right? It's really, you have to understand currency. The currency that I value most, because I was like 25, currency I valued most of the time, I was already sleeping in a gym. It wasn't like I was in a rush to get out. I was used to it. The currency I valued most was perspective and knowledge. And I still do that today. Sometimes people are like, you can charge this much. Why do you charge so little? Why do you do it for free? Because the currency that I am valuing right now is not money. So that's a lesson I learned way back then. It was like, there's a lot of currencies, and you can get way ahead if you stop going one-to-one, right? $1 of deliverable for $1 in cash. That's a long game to play. So I surrounded myself. I've probably had 200 or 300 business owners, like educated, affluent people coming through every day, spending time with me. I shortcutted, like, it takes people decades to get that much conversation with that kind of people, right? So shortcutted that. And because I was so interested in them and served them and always around, and originally lower price than everybody else, built a massive community, and where we just became the only logical place for an affluent family to have a membership. And that's where I built the R3 framework, and helping people understand the different currencies. Like, you might not have as much money, but you probably have something else that they want. And if they have a lot of money, they're going to part with it freely to get the thing that you have. And so it's understanding all these currencies and how to create a win-win-win where everybody gets what they're aiming for way faster than they would have thought possible.
Yeah.
So the gym did well. Out of the gym with Dr. Kashi, we launched a nutrition company. Same thing. Trevor is the genius behind it. All I did was help people understand how to change their behavior based on the information. That did really well. And then I moved to New Mexico to build something with somebody that taught other people how to have very similar gyms.
Cool.
Those all did very, very well. And then I spent a year in Nashville, just sold everything and was like, I don't know what I want to do. Got into internet marketing, realized that's a cluster, and got out of internet marketing as fast as possible. Still kind of dabble in it because there's a lot of money to be made on the internet, but there's a lot of dishonesty as well. So play with that. But yeah, I went to most things I've done, and I just share this because if people watch my stuff or get in my world, most things I've done seem incredibly fortunate. I feel like I'm fortunate, but incredibly fortunate. They all seem like overnight, like the gym. When I launched the network, my private client group had 0 clients. And then one day I was like, sure, I'll try this program. And I had 1, and then I had 5. By the end of the month, I think we had 25 people paying $3,000 a month. Overnight success, right?
Yeah.
What people don't realize is I spent the last 2 years actually helping all of these people for free.
Yeah.
And just giving a shit about them. And so a lot of the overnight success stuff, which is why I'm telling people right now is a great time to build the foundation. All the overnight success stuff has just been it's really just been a process of just continuing to show up and be helpful.
Yeah.
And when it goes back to a lot of things I talk about in bumpers, the rolling average and all that stuff, there is opportunity a year ago to build a webinar, run traffic, hard sell, and make a bunch of money, right? But there's no foundation. So that's where people are like, you got to build a webinar and you got to hard sell. And I said, no. And I watched their trajectory go up faster than mine, right? But I'm just worried about this rolling average over time because I know we got another 40, 50 years. And now most of them have crashed really hard. And there's this big gap between, how certain and comfortable I am during this COVID thing and how uncertain and uncomfortable they are. And again, I think right now is a great time to start building that foundation.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to be clear on that. It's easy for me to say, hey, Dan Nicholson and I launched this thing and it went to, a 7-figure run rate in 10 days. But Dan has been serving people for the last 20 years, and I've just been showing up every single day for the last 5 or 6.
Yeah.
So that overnight stuff's not really overnight. But it's really, really important the foundation is laid because you never know what's going to happen. We saw an economic downturn coming eventually. Nobody saw COVID, right? So even people preparing for a recession, thinking they're getting ahead, they got hit pretty hard if they didn't have a foundation of goodwill, trust, relationships to lean on. I'm leaning heavily on relationships. There's a lot of people that are leaning heavily on me, and that's why we develop them,
Yeah, that's great. One of the things that I read about Pokemon Go, which is a huge success, one thing he said was it was an overnight success which took 20 years in the making. So, you're absolutely right. You do the work. You need to build that solid foundation, and that's what carries you through these tough times. Now, bringing it back to the present now, I know that you also teach people how to thrive in these uncertain environments through your cash flow engineering and R3 framework. So can we, if you have time, maybe talk about that quickly and let people know that this is something that they should be looking at as well.
Yeah. So the R3 framework, I'll start there. It's basically the way that I've always just done business. codified, and it's turned into a book called Customers for Life. So you can go to havecustomersforlife.com and you can see the book. It's really like business 101. So I taught it, and a lot of people like blew their minds. Like frame shifts. I know you posted about it. Like they're like, this is crazy. The scary thing is it, again, a lot of that research, right, started being done in like 1957. It's like business 101 if you ever went to like college. So that's the scary thing is one, a lot of it's super fundamental. There's a lot of psychological stuff that I do that's unusual, but people now are saying, hey, I'm going to go out of business. I'm screwed. And we just look and we're like, you have a Facebook ad to a funnel to a sales page, right? That's not a business. That's a funnel. Like, that's just not. So like, let's follow up with people. Let's serve people. Let's show up. Let's go to the Chamber of Commerce locally. Like, let's tell our neighbors that we're here. Like all these things that are very, very basic. So I codified that because unless you were shut down, like a restaurant, the business fundamentals should carry you through these times. Maybe not. Maybe you went from maybe you have to go from a staff of 15 down to 2. Like that's part of it. That's unfortunate. But the fact that you're like, I'm going to go from 80 grand a month to 0 overnight, that's a problem. That means we're missing all kinds of just fundamental stuff. So R3 laid out the 8 stages of the customer journey, how we talk to them, how to communicate with them appropriately, think about the emotions that they're going through, especially right now. There's a lot of people are not buying, and it's for emotional reasons. Like logically, they have not been impacted. They still have a job. They're worried they might not tomorrow, right? So logically, people are buying off emotion. They're not buying off logic, or they stop buying off emotion. So R3 will show you how to control all that, just to make sure that like people are making decisions that are in their best interest, and really stick around forever. Like your raving fans, they might say, hey, can I pause my membership? Or they might say, hey, can you give me a discount? Or they might say, hey, look, I have gym owners that are clients, and their client said, hey, just keep billing me because I know it's going to be tough for you. And when this is over, I want to make sure that I can come back and you don't go out of business. Right? That's from teaching the principles where your clients are more concerned. They're very, very concerned about you still being there. So they just pay. They can't come into the gym, but they're going to pay anyway. So that's really the marketing and the retention side. At a higher level, perhaps more important, Dan Nicholson and I, and Dan is a CPA, brilliant guy. He's like the most qualified CPA on the planet. Put together cash flow engineering, which is, it's also kind of business 101. Like, when a business has a record month, they think that they're winning. The reality is, if you look at the data, most companies after a record month are at the highest risk. They're in the worst position they've ever been in, right? For so many reasons. Like record month, we don't know if it was episodic. Was it seasonal? Was it something we did? Without years of data, we don't really know. So record month, and then we take on all these expenses. We decide to spend more on ads, right? So our risk has gone up. And unless we sustain that record month, which almost never happens by virtue of it's a record, right? Like the hottest day ever recorded in LA. Chances are tomorrow's not going to be as hot because data suggests that that's the hottest it's going to be. So without that, what Dan would say, preponderance of data, people make really, really bad business decisions. And what happens, especially in the internet marketing world, but it's universal. Every win that they have, right? They get endorphins, they get a dopamine hit, and they want more wins. In reality, every win is putting their business at more risk. So we see this like another win, another record month, ring the bell, another win, and they're like getting in a worse and worse and worse position. Facebook stops working for one day, and all of a sudden they have more overhead than they could ever sustain. right? So cash flow engineering is the process of understanding how to actually make decisions from marketing, sales, but also operationally. What do you delegate? What do you not delegate? There's a lot of rhetoric about outsource everything that's not high leverage. And people have no idea how to actually determine objectively what is high leverage, right? They interpret it as like things I want to do. Very, very different. So it's pretty much got business 101 on like the marketing, sales, or retention side. And then on the actual cash flow engineering is like actual business development strategy. How do I hire? When do I hire? What do I delegate? Do I spend more on advertising? How do I know how much to spend on advertising? Do I take on more costs? My revenue went up. Do I take on more costs? Do I take on more risks or not? How do I know? Just business strategy, long-term sustainability stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much. I wish we had more time. I know you're busy, you have to go. But one thing I noticed here, one more question. Is it okay? Can we go for 5 more minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. So I noticed that you are in your office right now, and California is one of the hardest hit states in the world. One of the hardest hit areas in the world. And I know you have this theory about how the brain thinks, and what is the reason? You obviously you don't have to come to office to do what you do, but you come to the office every day, and you share your thoughts, you send your emails. What is the reason behind it?
There's a few. One, I like having my space. The brain is highly associative. So Stephen King is famous for saying, you don't wait for the muse to strike. You just tell the muse you're going to show up at 7 a.m. every day, and it'll start showing up. There's a little bit of that, but I have a process, right? So you could probably see like, I got books and notes and all that. And frankly, I'm just really too lazy to pack it up and bring it home. This office is it's a phone company, so it is deemed essential infrastructure. So it's there's actually people that come in and out every day, but primarily I have dogs, right? They're half husky, half wolf, so they're maniacs. And honestly, if I'm home, I'll just play with them all day. So I keep actually the exact same schedule I kept before. I keep it on holidays. I keep it on here's another thing that weirds people out. Holidays, birthday, all that stuff, keep the same schedule. But the reality is, because people are like, oh, you should take time off. The reality is I just treat every day like it's a holiday or my birthday, right? This is actually the schedule that I would keep if I could do whatever I wanted. So there's no resistance, like getting out of bed, coming to the office. It's just kind of what I do. If we were forced shelter in place and this was not an essential infrastructure, I would just bring everything home.
Cool. Great.
But I like to have a space. I know when I'm in this space, I'm working. I got a couch. I know I got a couch right in the corner there. I know that when my brain, like when I'm stuck on something, like I'm writing an email, I'm just stuck. I'll go lay on the couch for 5 minutes. It'll come to me and I pop right back up and my computer's here.
Great. Awesome.
So it's just a habit, routine.
Yeah. So the question the purpose of the question was to just demonstrate, how you implement the concepts of bumpers and all that in your daily lives, and how it has helped you design your life, and it is helping a lot of other people design their life and get exactly what they want out of life. So thank you so much for being with us and doing what you do and sharing all the information. Hopefully we'll get another chance to speak to you. But thanks a lot. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you.